Hi, everybody, and welcome. You reached the Yayo Show. And guess what, everybody? I got a special guest. I got my cousin Lamar here. Hey, Lamar, how are you? Welcome to the Yayo Show.
Hey, what's good, good? How you doing today?
Hi, cousin. How are you?
I'm great.
How everything doing down south? You're in Georgia now, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
I'm in
All
Georgia, a few miles south of Atlanta.
right.
Um, I like the intro.
You like the intro? That is your
Yeah.
cousin Malika. That's my little sister singing that. If everybody
Okay.
like to know, that's Malika's song code, and I use it because everybody know Malika plays my management and make sure everything's like in place and everything. She be behind the scene making sure everything's going smooth. But yeah, shout out to Malika for the song, for starting this, getting us together, her and me writing and rapping on it also. And a good friend of mine's Gemini Ramon, the OG, helped out. So we put a little song together for this intro music. So Lamar, now you're on the Yayo show. We've been trying to get this together for a while. And this is one of the most important shows to me of all time. Let me tell you, everybody, my cousin Lamar is a counselor, and he's going to give us a little bit about ourselves. Tell him the experience that you have, because we're going to go ahead and start this topic off about PTSD, being in trauma bonds, and we got so much things to cover, but we're going to try to cover as much as we can in the next 25, 30 minutes. So go ahead and tell my viewers exactly what is your experience in living in counseling with people with PTSD.
Oh, good deal. Well, first I kind of wanted. I started off as a life coach.
Okay.
I took my life coaching certifications through Tony Robbins, who is Oprah's life coach.
Okay.
Did that for about 5 to 10 years.
Hmm.
Then it just seemed like something was missing.
Right.
My mom was an educator, so doing it um, outside of the school just didn't seem quite right. So I wanted to go back to school, got my master's in psychology, and then I start counseling, start volunteering, um, basically helping soldiers in the military. Wind up getting enlisted at an age way beyond the the cutoff
Hmm.
for enlisting. And so I've been doing that for about the past 5 years as well.
Okay, then. All right, then. So it's safe to say that you are qualified to have this good conversation with me about PTSD.
I do, and a lot of one thing I do like to point out, a lot of people are like, well, what's the difference between a counselor and a psychologist, or a counselor and a therapist? Well, a counselor, I do not have a doctoral degree, so I'm not a doctor.
Okay.
Um, Counselors, we still deal with the study and the work to improve the functioning of human behavior, but
Okay.
the psychologists deal more with the scientific and the prescription aspects of it.
Oh, right.
I don't like prescriptions. I deal more, both kind of both really want it to happen from a holistic approach, but it is still the training is almost the same. The
Right.
practices are a little different to where they may use drugs, and you know we deal more with the individual. A counselor deals more with the individual person than the scientific whole of that behavior. If that
Right.
makes sense.
No, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. And since we are talking about the prescription versus non-prescription, um, dealing with people with PTSD, um, if they don't want to use prescription, because a lot of people like, no, I don't want to use. We call it the crazy drug. I ain't gonna lie,
Yeah.
that's what we call
Right.
it. Like, no, once you give me a prescription, I feel like I am diagnosed as crazy. And it's first of all in our community, it's really hard for us to even check and see if we're diagnosed. You don't see more African Americans in our community to get help and seek counseling and seek for counseling. You get what I mean? So,
Yeah. To me, I think a lot of a lot of people want to self diagnose,
right.
and that's an issue. People don't want to go to the doctor for to really evaluate if you actually have this. We do it with bipolar, anxiety, and people like, oh, I have anxiety. Well, have you gone to the doctor? Have you been diagnosed with that? So, kind of as a counselor, the difference, and this is another difference. On the counseling side, I'm not as concerned with your diagnosis as I am with the improvement of that behavior. So,
Okay.
I don't care what you call it, how do we
Improve.
systematically improve it?
Okay. I get it. I get it. So you're more helping with the improvement. Do you feel that
Yeah.
medication help it improve, or do you feel like it just put a band-aid on the problem?
Oh, 100%. I've had several people sit across from me, and I knew immediately this person needs drugs to
Okay.
help them.
Okay.
You know,
All right.
but again, I think that's not in all cases.
Not
I
all.
think in a lot of cases, things are overprescribed, especially like when you talk about with kids, ADHD and Ritalin and those Schedule 2 or 3 narcotics.
Right.
That's a lot to put into a child because they won't sit still in a classroom. And
Right.
so overdiagnosing is a thing as well. So, but we could go eons.
On that. I mean, sometimes
Yeah,
that can even be with ADHD is sugar in the
yeah,
brain. It could play a
yeah,
lot of diet can play a part of that chemical
yeah.
imbalance or,
And
go on.
but again, I think a lot of parents, so I've had some parents, and I can't remember where it came from. They give, and it seems like the total opposite thing that you would want to do. Kids with ADHD, they give them coffee, which
Oh,
what the coffee does, the it blocks those receptors, so it acts as a de-stimulant rather than a stimulant. So they
oh,
give their kids a cup of coffee before they go to school, and they behave as you would call normal.
wow. So the coffee helps. It's not a myth. It
Yeah,
actually does help.
yeah. Have you heard that before?
I have. I have.
Yeah, okay.
I always look at coffee like it's gonna
Yeah,
wake me up. You know what I mean? But
yeah,
sometimes I calm down because I can have coffee at 6 o'clock in the evening, and I can go
yeah,
to sleep like normal. It kind of calms me down, so I can kind of like I can't cope without my coffee in the morning. Like I
yeah.
gotta have it.
And
So
that's just another difference between, like, again, it's a holistic approach to where coffee is something that's readily available to you, but the long term effects is not the same as prescribing a drug that you now have to um, have a reduction plan for that
right,
same child as well. So
right,
I know you put them on it, but you also have to see how you're going to get them off of it. And
right.
with counseling, that's far beyond my scope.
Okay. Well, because I do want to ask you this. Uh,
Mhm.
as a family member, when you have somebody that's suffering from PTSD, how do you recommend that the family get involved to help? Because with me being I was diagnosed with it. Let me give you a little history of what happened. I was in a terrible mass shooting in one of the largest shooting in American history. At Route 91 out here in Las Vegas, Nevada. I was bartending that night. 58 people was killed on the spot. 400 people was shot, injured, even more injured. I was injured. I fractured a skull, broke ribs, tore a lot of muscle, and the first 3 days, it didn't affect me. I was in pain. My body was hurting. But I remember 15 days later after that, I started having nightmares. Like
Wow.
jumping out of my sleep was one of the symptoms. I was just having bad dreams, waking up in cold sweat, thinking that the shooter was just sitting over me. Like I'm really having nightmares in the middle of the night and jumping. Or if somebody come and wake me up. My mom one day had before surgery woke me up and I'm like jumped real bad. She said, when your dad came home from Vietnam, he used to jump like that. You need to get checked, you know what I mean? Because it's getting a little bad. So, what do you do to recommend when you're dealing with a family member? Because some people with mental illness, they kind of isolate themselves and they don't want to talk about it. But the rage, you get angry fast, or you know what I mean? So, I'll let you go ahead and speak on that.
Yeah, no, I think you touched on. I mean, you were headed touching on a lot of different things. One,
Oh,
the piece, um, that person may not be ready to deal with it. They still may be in a state of shock, and that trauma is still as real as the day that it happened.
right,
So they're not to say they're not ready to be treated, but you're not going to start seeing improvements yet.
right,
Just like with anything, you first gotta that person has to be willing. If they're not ready, um, no, and that's where I think drugs come into play. To where sometimes the
right,
drugs can bring you to a level to where you can deal with it and still maintain your sanity. Um, you know, the mind is a is a is elastic, so it can it'll protect itself.
right,
So if you're not in a space to where you can deal with it, your mind won't let you go there. So what the drugs can do is bring you to a level to where I can now talk about it and still feel safe, if you will. It doesn't mean I'm in a good place, but I can see a boundary. But with some things, I can't even touch it because I know if I go there, I don't know how far it would take me. So,
right,
so the counseling is, again, as a counselor, what I have to do is deal with that individual. And in many cases, it may be dealing with the family first. To where if that person's not ready, um, I'm I'm speaking to the mother, the father, the kids, everyone around that person to let them know these are the types of behavior you may see, and when you see this behavior, these should be your reactions. Don't overreact. Don't you know you need to bring calm into the situation and not escalate. So really
not
teaching them how to de-escalate the triggers and the things that will further exacerbate the trauma.
right. And with that, like, what are some of the symptoms that you tell the parents and the family that they're going to see, like when they get triggering, like trouble sleeping, concentration was one of my biggest things. I could not find my car when I leave Walmart or the parking lot. I can't remember where I parked. I had
Yeah.
memory loss for 2 years. I can't remember, and I would just be and then, I with the injury, my hearing got worse, and I can't even hear the horn ring, and I would have to ask a stranger in a parking lot, "Hey, can you help me find my car?" I had a head injury, and I can't even remember where I parked, and I'm only, like, 40 something years old, and I can't remember where I parked. It's like
Yeah.
that, you know?
Yeah. I think your head injury may have, you know, taken that into a lot of different areas that that again compounding onto the PTSD.
Right,
Because you're dealing with, you said, a fractured skull, and
right.
again, until I knew you were somehow involved with the
Right,
shooting.
right,
Did not know it was to that level.
right,
I thought, and again, not to. I thought, and maybe again, I think this is my mind protect because I love my
You're
cousin.
not right.
Yeah. So,
You protecting
and
you.
I'm protecting me because I'm thinking it happened at a place that she's worked before. Like
Right.
you're close to it and you may have an emotional attachment to it. Not that you were there,
I was
and definitely not that you were
saw
experiencing any type of gunfire.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
saw a man go down.
Yeah.
I know, I saw plenty. And we thought it was fireworks, because
Yeah.
they're playing the music and they saying the speech, and we thought it was fireworks. So we didn't even know that we were being shot at until we started seeing people falling. Like it's a real deal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and then after it stopped for a little while, everybody started running. So you got to imagine 22,000 people fenced in like cattle running for their lives. It was a fun time until that happened. Now we're not friends anymore. You get what I mean? Everybody's on self
Right.
defense. Like
Yeah.
I don't know if this person the shooter or that person the shooter. We don't know who's who or where it's coming from either. Only people that know where it's coming from is the people that's watching on the news and the helicopters, and they're calling our phone saying this is where it's coming from 10, 15 minutes later. But we couldn't even get
Wow.
out. So that's another story. Let's get back
Yeah.
on to the
Yeah.
topic. And then, what was so crazy, I was doing a little research, and the highest rate is what I was seeing with PTSD is an unexpected death of a loved one. That
Hmm.
is one of the highest rate, and then the second highest rate is the injuries and, like, witnessing or discovering these kinda injuries, and then the lowest is, like, car accidents and, life illness, but it was really surprising to me when I seen that the highest rate is just from an unexpected death that can cause that, you know what I mean, and people grieving, but it's what I wanna know is if you got 2 people in a community, being in I grew up in Flint, Michigan, so it's a little bit different from where we from, but say I got PTSD and my best friend got PTSD. Sometimes it can clash because they feel one way, and now the way she made me feel or he made me feel, it triggered me. Where now I
Yeah.
don't want nothing to do with you because I'm still how can you say recovering. Okay.
Yeah.
So how do you deal when you're dealing with a community and friends that's dealing with the same problem because of so many other causes of PTSD without looking like, am I the asshole?
Well, I think it's pretty cliche, but hurt people hurt people. And when you both can recognize that neither of you are well
Right.
or whole from a emotionally safe place, both of you have experienced some type of trauma that leaves you feeling vulnerable, be it emotionally, physically, or, emotional or physically. We won't touch the spiritual part because that's not really involved in that piece. But
Right.
um, once you can kind of, you know, and again, it depends on what stage you are in your healing.
Right.
If neither of you have come to grips that you even have an issue, um, that's probably going to form a very toxic relationship between you two because you both are dealing with the trauma. You both are damaged to some degree. And how can two damaged people make something good?
Right.
And,
Right.
and one thing as a counselor, what I try to do is I look at everything from a work relationship, personal relationship, and even from a spiritual relationship. So
Right.
to me, that's the litmus test. If it can work, if I can draw a parallel between those three. So again, if we're if we're dating, if we both have experienced some type of hurt that we can't talk about, it's gonna it, even if the relationship functions, there's a gap in our closeness as we embark on or as we continue on in the relationship, and eventually we're going to have to either fill that gap with something,
Hmm.
which is the healing piece, so that it'll be repaired, or we'll need to build something artificial, be it a bridge, so we can cross over that gap and still remain close on that same level.
Right. Okay. I get what you're saying because, and it does take a lot of patience too. But once again, it's just, I always had this saying blood is thicker than water, but mental health is thicker than blood. And it's like, if it's costing me too much of my mental, where I'm getting too emotional in this and it's making me feel triggered, I remove myself. But how do you remove yourself from a friendship or a relationship to keep your peace? And it's like, is this selfish of me? You know what I mean? But I have an issue and I
Yeah,
need help.
yeah, and I think the
And
one thing somebody told me about myself is it's okay to be selfish. I used to think being selfish was bad, but if it protects you and if it puts you in a better space, because no different than flying on the airline, um, you can't try to say until you put on your own oxygen mask, you can't try to render aid to the next person. So if you're not good, um, even if you try to be social with family and everyone else, you're not good. So it's better long term, and it may hurt, but you again, if they're loving and if everyone is open to the idea that you needed help, eventually you can all get to the space to where no, I didn't necessarily like the way she withdrew from us, but she needed to do that in order to be with us now. So you got to look at it long term, and that's really the one thing that most people can fixate on. Um, most people focus on the moment. So right now I'm very upset. So this moment now seems bigger than anything that's going to happen 5 years from now.
right,
But if
right,
I can somehow detach myself from this moment and say, okay, I'm having a moment. Let me pull away so I can have a relationship with my mother, my sister, my brother, my cousin, my
right,
my wife,
right,
husband, yeah, significant other, kids, 5 years from now, because I don't want to say something that I can't take back.
right. No, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. And a lot of people don't see the symptoms. So before we, cut this off, I would like to go over some of the symptoms that you see. One of them, especially with me, I can get triggered very easy, like, and go into a rage. Like, I'm triggered. It doesn't take much to put me back into that place. So what do you recommend when you see people that a way to avoid the trauma related thoughts? What is one of your ways to avoid the thoughts to get into that head?
And one thing I like to do, I try not to wear a counselor hat. I pretty much take off my counselor hat, and I'm just a real dude.
Right.
So for me, rather than me trying to, because I think a lot of people want to do it because we all like to be right. You know,
Everybody want to be right these days,
yeah,
right?
yeah, you want to be right.
you know,
So for me, the less I'm gonna I'm gonna help you be right. So just consider the other person more than you consider yourself, and that's as a counselor, or as a friend, as a husband, or as anyone that's trying to be in a relationship with someone else. I
right,
don't need to know what's going on with you in order to know how to react with compassion towards you.
right.
So, and that's why, oh, does she have PTSD? Well, it doesn't matter. She's hurting. It's obvious she's not acting like herself.
Right.
So, be it, you know, well, how did I trigger her? it doesn't matter. She's in a bad space. How do you help your friend get back into a good space?
Exactly.
So
How do you
yeah,
help the impact? Help them understand.
yeah. Um, so maybe like I may not know your whole history, but if we get into an elevator, so let's say some traumatic event to where it could be something as simple as you're claustrophobic, and there's
Okay.
just too many people in the elevator at the moment,
Right.
or it could be a real trauma that happened in a confined space that an elevator triggers. But for me, the behavior from the people in the elevator that are with you should be the same. Are you okay? Do we need to get out? Do we need to take the stairs? Do we even need to go? Do we need to go home? You know,
But most
but
people
people,
want to be like, that's your problem. Get yourself fixed. You get what I
yeah,
mean? Like in today's world, nobody cares about what's going on. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying? Which that's how I feel. But you got some nice people that be
yeah,
like, hey, are you okay? You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like, thank you. Like some water, please, some air. But you know,
yeah. But I think the human condition is we've taught ourselves not to care, and we've taught ourselves to try to put a label on people when they're in a bad situation. Like, because you want to, because, but again, the mind wants to understand it because you see a lady having an event in an elevator, and you want to believe that that can never happen to you, but oh, it can. You know, you just hadn't experienced what she's experienced, and you may would be worse or just a little bit better, but
okay,
you know, and that's the thing is this is unique as a person
right.
because we all have a set of life experiences that we bring into that led us up to that moment that we don't know how to deal with.
Right. Okay. Well, the last question is, how does PTSD change a person? You know what I mean? And what does everyday life look living with PTSD? I know what it looks like for me, but I see a lot of difference. Like this person isn't the same person anymore. You know what I mean? And
Yeah, and I think again we just look at the treatment piece of it is the behavior that's been altered by trauma.
right,
So the idea is to get that person to again not suppress the trauma, but to heal from the trauma to where their behavior is that much more. Um, I hate to even use the word normal because nothing's normal
nothing
anymore.
normal anymore.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean,
Normal
everything that we call
anymore.
normal, I think kids now call it weird.
Yeah, they call that's the new weird. Hey, yeah, they're
Yeah,
weird.
yeah. So, um, yeah. So the thing around PTSD is really just. I know there's a PTSD awareness month. Um,
In June.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
June.
and I think we have to be really aware and compassionate. I mean, when you lead with com, you know compassion and love, and that just sounds so like rainbows and unicorns. But
Right,
but when you can lead with that, you're kind of more empathetic, and that maybe that's the right better word for today.
right,
Having some empathy just towards anybody.
right.
Um, my kids express empathy with even people that are homeless. Like we have serious conversations about because they wonder how in the world could anybody ever end up homeless?
Right,
And I'm like, oh, we'll have a great conversation when we get home. And so,
right,
we explain to them, sometimes it's a bunch of bad decisions that that person made.
right,
Sometimes it could be a series of life events that that person really had utterly no control over that led them to that.
right,
So, uh, but they both end up in the same place,
right,
and they're both in a real predicament that they need help with.
Right. And I experience this myself. Sometimes overgiving. You gave
Yeah,
more into your cup, like you helping this person, that person, that person. Now you don't have it no more, and nobody's gonna give back. You know what I mean? And it's
yeah,
like, hold on, I gave out too much. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Being overgiving and environment, helping sometimes the wrong people. And that's one of the reasons why, like you said, I really like it's okay to be selfish. Like, wait a minute, because if I keep giving, I'll be homeless because I can't do this no more. I can't afford
yeah.
to do it,
And I'm
And
telling you, you could find a group of homeless people that would tell you, I helped the wrong people, and then something bad happened to me, and I had no way to help myself.
I had nowhere to
And
put myself.
that's a and that's a real predicament. And now when you go back to, and it probably creates some level of PTSD
Right.
because
Trauma,
now,
like
yeah,
it,
right, now I'm in need and no one is there for me. So it's definitely going to change the way I approach life going forward.
right,
So even when I do get a little something, um, I may be resentful towards the
right,
people that didn't help me. I may be resentful towards people who wanted to help me but didn't have it because it's probably times that I wanted to help. It's probably times that I didn't have it, but I still help people anyway.
right,
And everybody's not you, and
right.
that's why you have to protect
And one
you
of you got
first.
to protect you, and when you do, and the first thing a taker say is, well, don't give if you're expecting something in return. And then I'm thinking like, well, I didn't expect anything for return, but as much as I gave, I asked for one favor. You know what I mean? So where's the loyalty? You know what I
Yeah,
mean? But you would expect a taker to tell you something like that, like, well, what,
yeah,
it's easy for you because you a take, you know what I mean?
yeah,
But I don't give anybody anything and expect anything in return. But it's just, experience like, hey, do you think that you can do this? No, and I ain't do it. They set
yeah,
the boundaries. And I'm like, wow. So what I learned is I set boundaries. I just learned, hey, no, or hey, it's costing me too much of my emotions. I have to remove myself from this. You
yeah.
know what I mean? And
You-
I just learned to
you-
take care of me, love me.
And you have to own it.
Yeah,
To where if,
gotta stand
if I overgive, that's on me. Like
on me.
that's not on them
Right,
for taking it. 'Cause to your
right,
point, nothing more a taker likes more than a giver. So you
right.
know, if you're giving it, you best believe a taker is taking it,
They
and it's
take
not on them. They're just being who they are.
just being
So
who they are.
yeah,
Yeah.
so I can't blame them. I can't blame a shark for biting. I can't, blame a snake for slithering. That's what they do.
Right,
So, uh, what am I choosing? So I maybe made some bad choices in that
right,
situation. And
right,
now, again, not to focus so much on the diagnosis or the what. Once we figure out the why, how do we move forward? And that's really more so, I think, you know, with counseling, psychologists, we're still trying to find a way to give, and this is probably life coaching pieces.
okay.
Every life has a blueprint. So th- when your life matches your blueprint, you're happy.
Yeah,
When it doesn't match your blueprint, you're unhappy.
right,
So what you have to do, and I sometimes call myself a life architect for that same reason, is
okay,
because I help you create a new blueprint.
okay,
Because in some cases, um, you know, I deal with soldiers. So if you lost a limb, your old blueprint is never going to match up on that. So you'll remain in an unhappy state.
right,
So we create a new blueprint. So what would your life look like? What would your best, everyone wants to be living their best life. What
right,
would your best life look like with the loss of that limb?
okay,
So let's create a blueprint that matches that, and now we can work on a plan and a process to
Right.
get you to that new blueprint. So when
Right.
you don't like your life, create a new blueprint.
Got to create a new blueprint. So that's even like we could use that in relationships too. Like, you know what? This is not working. Let's create. I have to
Yeah,
create a new blueprint for myself and figure
yeah,
out on this new blueprint, how could I get this new life
yeah,
without you in it?
yeah. Oh, yeah. Mm,
I,
mm, mm,
I'm taking it there and I'm getting personal. Let me stop.
mm. I don't. I don't want to condone just throwing him out.
Right.
That's it. It could be a new blueprint that still involves him. In some cases, it will be without him.
Well, we can be involved, but
Yeah,
we got to
yeah,
figure out a new blueprint because sometimes people don't change. So you got to ask yourself, can you still deal with this person another 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? So let's get a new blueprint on this is my new life. But if you don't like this architect, what do you do?
you so hard on him, cuz. You hard on him. You hard on him.
Hard on them. They mean.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be hard if people wouldn't be so mean. I don't like
Okay.
mean people. Not just slaying. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to take it there, but hey.
You killing him. You killing him.
Well, thank you, cuz we took up too much of your time. I promised you 25 minutes. We went into 36 minutes, but everybody give Lamar a hand, and I appreciate you, Lamar.
I
Thank
appreciate you,
you.
cuz. We're gonna come back and talk about relationships.
Okay, you want to talk about relationships? Because I could use some help. I'm
You don't need
terrible.
that. Okay. Well, yeah, we'll do that.
I am terrible, but everybody, you can get in touch with Lamar Hill at Lamar Hill Instagram right there. He's also on Facebook, and I will put his information in the comments and everything on my YouTube channel. And Lamar, thank you so much for taking out the time with me today.
Okay. Thank you, cuz. Love you.
Love you too. Thank
All right.
you. Hold on. Here we go.